Good morning, Chris. This is John. Okay, so you're messing me up again here, buddy. When you're shifting around, I just shifted you onto your deal. What are you doing over
Well, I was going to get ready to share. Get ready to share. I didn't know you could see mine.
there? We're going to edit this part out. All right.
Good plan.
Can you share? No, it's not working. There we go. Now we can do it. Well, hi, Chris. Good morning, and welcome to BusinessWhitt's 30 Minutes to Better Business Results. This is part of our Winning Your Entrepreneurial Experience workshop package. And our objective here is to spend about 30 minutes together and be able to demonstrate, convey some information and knowledge that would be valuable to you and your team and anybody else that happens to be watching this particular video. And we'll talk about how do we want to promote this video as we go forward. And the reason behind this video and this program, and the reason why we're doing this in sort of as a free service, free streaming service, is that we know with the Great Recession that a lot of people lost their jobs, almost 7.5 million people. We also know that there's about 53 million freelance contractors out there in the marketplace. And the reality is that they got kind of kicked out of their jobs, out of their corporate jobs without consent, and they've gone out to try and start their own business. And these are the people that are willing to work hard and go the extra mile and do things that need to be done to take care of their family. They buy cars, they buy houses, et cetera, et cetera. And the reality is that them starting their own business is their best solution for that activity because of the new jobs that have been created. There's a study that says only about 2% of the new jobs in the last 5 years that have been created are sort of in that middle management, $30,000 to $80,000 a year deal. And so we're going to try and help these people get better and more effective faster. So let's switch back to you, Chris, and ask you, based on our discussions, tell me a little bit about what it is that you do, your team, and your current experience and what you'd like some help with.
Okay. Well, first, thank you for having me on today, John. And I appreciate your help with us. Well, what I do is I work with Lioness. It's a loyalty program, but it's kind of more than that. It's kind of a community-based business development program. So I work with small businesses and I work with entrepreneurs. We recently brought on 2 new businesses, and they've seen a lot of success with the program. But businesses have challenges. I'm like you. There's a lot of people who are very good at their core. Let's say their core competency. They know how to make a great sandwich, or they really know. One particular person we brought on was a bakery and makes great baked goods. But as far as the business, he has a bit of a challenge. That's where we helped him with our program. But what I'm finding is sort of getting those people to look at things differently, right? They're used to doing things their way, and then having to look at the new technology that's out there and how this can help their business. And we also recruit entrepreneurs, which is kind of what you were talking about earlier. And how do we get those people to be more effective at what they're doing? How do we get them to take those talents that they had that they maybe applied in the corporate range and turn those into entrepreneurial skills? And I can tell you right now for myself, I experienced that. I've experienced a lot of pain, and you've actually helped me through a couple of those pain points. And that is that, look, I was a corporate trainer, and now I'm basically in sales. And for some reason, I don't know why, I thought that those would translate so very easily, and that was not the case. And I think a lot of what you could help us with is how do you start the conversations with people appropriately? That kind of how do you build that rapport so people will start listening to you and what you can provide for that person. So that's kind of where I think this could really help me. It could help the team that I'm working with. We have a lot of people on my team that want to talk to entrepreneurs, who want to talk to business owners in particular, because that's kind of the growth phase that my company's going through right now. But let's say the skill set on how to talk to them appropriately isn't quite as well developed as we would like. I think that's a fairly accurate way of putting it. So if you could shed some light on that, I think that would help us and my team.
So I think I've got actually 3 different things that we'll catch here real quick. I'm going to flip the camera to my top camera so that we get a little better view of the flip chart back there.
Mm-hmm.
What we're going to talk about personals. We're going to talk a little bit about behavioral styles,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to talk a little bit about this thing called the Thehari Window, which has to do with building relationships, right? Ties directly into the question that you talked about. And then we'll talk about one of the 6 pillars of persuasion, and that's all based on a book called Influence, the Art of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. He's a psychologist, and that particular influence that we're going to talk about is persuasive influence is reciprocation.
Mm-hmm.
So let me start with I'm going to start with the Thehari Window, right? So the Thehari Window is a way of kind of tracking relationships and about how we can do it. Now you can Google Thehari Window, and what I can do and what I am happy to do is send you a copy of the questionnaire. And the questionnaire will actually measure the size of your particular window right now. But let's talk about what that means. So this is the Thehari Window, and it's really a 4-square, and so many things are, right? But it's really a 4-square activity, right? And for every person, we have these 4 squares, right? And so for right now, Chris, I'm going to use you as the square. In the top left corner of the square, I mean, this is the stuff that you know about you, right? And it's also the stuff that John knows about you. So that's the stuff that we both understand about you. These are things that we know that you like, things that you don't like, style, behavior, corporate trainer, past background. So these are all common knowledge between the two of us, right? And we go off to the right here, and we say this box right here, this is the stuff that Chris knows about Chris that I don't know, right? So I don't know this stuff. There's plenty of those things. Some of those things are consequential, some of those are non-consequential, right? And we'll talk about how do we want to use those as we develop this relationship, right? And then down below here, in the next level, I'm going to get a different color pen. You know, this is the stuff that John knows about Chris, but Chris doesn't know I know that. And this is where my perceptions and my thoughts and my information lies, right? So these are the things I think, right? And then over here in this box here is called the unknown, right? And this is what neither one of us know about you. So we're going to talk about when it comes to building relationships, what we're really trying to do is we're saying, listen, how can I make this box bigger? Now in the questionnaire, they'll give you a rating chart, and it goes from 0 to 50 here and 0 to 50 over here, and it'll actually tell you where these axes are and where your particular box lies. But one of the things we want to do when it comes to building relationships, we get better relationships as this box gets bigger, right? The more information, the more common information and knowledge that we have about you, and vice versa about me, right? Because I have my own 4-square box, right? The better our relationship is going to be. And so very simply what we can do is we can say, hey, Chris, if you take information from that box and push it into here, guess what? This box is going to get a little bigger, right? And if I take information and push it into here, guess what? That box is going to get a little bigger, right? And so now that's how we grow the box. Now the other thing you can do is you can learn some things about yourself. There's a lot of assessments. There's a lot of different tools out there. And you can learn those kinds of things and figure out how can I take stuff from here and push it into that particular box, right? Because once I've taken it from the unknown, I got to put another N on that. Once I've taken it from the unknown and put it into the known, then you can decide to share it. We'll talk about disc profiles in a minute, which is a behavioral style assessment. So the key to this, though, is the sharing, right? So that allows us to grow this bigger. Now, some people are really good at sharing. They're very good at telling other people things, right? And that's typically an extroverted behavior. Somebody that understands how to start a relationship and everything else, they may not be very good at asking questions, right? And so one of the things that we learn is that in the reciprocation model, right, I do something for you, you do something for me, then we learn that whoever starts it, the next person sort of finishes it. And this is an age-old historic process where watch my stuff while I go do this, and then I'll watch your stuff as you have to go do something, right? And so what we can do is we can take this, Chris, if you want to make this square bigger, certainly you can do that, but when you contribute first, when you say, I like this, or I want this, or I'm this kind of person, or I'm that kind of person, and we're talking about non-consequential, right? We're not looking at your deepest, darkest fantasies, but we're just really looking to say, what are some of the things that you can communicate to me when you say, this is the type of challenge and issue that I have, what do I do? I typically say, well, look, this is the type of challenge and issue that I have. And I start to push information in this area. So you can actually control the flow of information from your box into here and get me to do more things over here. If you just come in and start asking questions, right, I may or may not be willing to populate the box, right? But if you start sharing information first, then I might be willing to populate the box, and am very likely, because it's actually a psychological behavior pattern of reciprocation, where I will very likely then populate the box immediately after you.
Mhm.
So in this particular case, this is a great way to understand how to grow this relationship. Two things that have to happen. You have to understand kind of what's your style, right? How do you do it? What works for you? And the second thing is, what is the stuff that I'm going to share, right? What's effective, right? So we could actually plan those things in advance. We could very strategically identify the things that we want to share, because those are the things that we want to know and hear back from the person that we're developing a relationship with, right? Now, if immediately in the sales model, right, if you immediately jump right in and say, well, you buy my stuff, we haven't done any sharing. We haven't created any relationship whatsoever.
Yeah.
We don't even know what that person needs. So it's very hard for us to tell them, that our product works or that our product is the best one for them, right? But sometimes we want to ask really good questions. We want to ask hard questions like how much and when and why and how come. And people don't typically share those types of things until you've built this relationship in the first place. So once this box is big enough, then you sort of earn the right to be able to ask more difficult questions. You might be able to say, well, how much is your budget for that, or how much do you make doing that, or what would it be like to have this? And they'll actually give you some answers because we've created the relationship that we want in the first place. All right, so we're going to come back to that in just a minute, but we're going to talk about behavioral style real quick. And so, I do a lot of work with the DISC profile. There's a lot of different behavioral style assessments out there. I'm not downplaying or upplaying any one of them. The one I use is DISC because it's very simple and it's easy, right? But with the DISC box, it's another 4-square, right? This seems to be a theme in many training devices, right? One of the things that we know is that we have people that tell other people things, right? And the way this works is D, I, S, and C from a behavioral standpoint, right? So the D's and the I's, they like to tell people things, and that actually is an extroverted type of behavior, right? So they don't need any incentive. So that's sort of extrovert behavior, right? And then this group over here has a tendency to want to ask questions, right? So the C and the S have a tendency to want to ask questions. If we look at the way we're going to break this line down here, this is sort of a task and goal strategy, right? That's their focus, the C's and the D's. And then ultimately we have the S's and the I's, and these are sort of people and motive strategies, right? And so we can look at this and say, which one am I, right? So depending on where you're at, and let's just say that you like that you don't have any problem talking to people, but you're very people and emotion and feeling oriented. That's important and valuable to you, right? And so you know that you're this particular style. So being able to share things with other people is probably not too hard, right? But now, well, that means you really got to learn how to ask questions, because that's what makes these guys float. So if you're talking to these guys here, we want to start asking some questions. Vice versa, if I'm used to asking all the questions, then I have to get better at learning how to tell other people things, right?
Yeah.
If you take something like a DISC profile, or you go down and you take, what is it, Strengths Finder, which is a very simple, inexpensive book. It's actually a great book. It's not simple. It's a great book. But for $20 or so, Amazon.com, you can get your top talents, right? And so what will happen is then you begin to learn some things about yourself that you'd like to share, or maybe you just sit there and say, look, these are the things I like, these are the things I don't like, and those are the things I'm going to share with this person that I'm building a relationship with. So understanding your own personal style and where you're at, and what it is that you need to learn to be able to operate the Thehari window effectively, right? Because you want to strategically come up with those kinds of things that you're going to share because you want me to share. And again, you can do this in advance. And so a lot of times when we go to meet a new person, we say, how are you? How'd you get into this business? Did you watch the game? These are all relationship building questions, but allows us to build that information. We get to talk about our sports teams, or we get to talk about our hobbies, or we get to talk about families, or we get to talk about business. Not business as in, do you want to buy my stuff, but how's it going? What's happened? What do you like? What don't you like? How does it work? All of those kinds of things. It allows us to make this box bigger and bigger. So Chris, does that help a little bit with some of the things you were talking about earlier in helping people to understand a little bit about, how to have conversations?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's kind of funny. I think the way that I do it, having been a stand-up comic, is I usually use humor. That's usually the first thing I'll share, right? And then if somebody laughs, or then they'll share back with me, they'll kind of joke around with me, and that seems to be a very fast way for me to build kind of a relation. It's kind of that's kind of my default that I go to. But it's kind of interesting that you talk about sharing the challenges, which I really find interesting, because I think that might be one of those key things that kind of helps people open. And I'll just give you an example. I was talking with somebody I was working with just recently, and we were talking about some of the challenges that we had, and he immediately told me a lot of the challenges he was having with his work. And I accidentally fell into this without really knowing it. And he was telling me about some of the worries he had about his business and what he should do, and it really struck up a much more, richer conversation than the initial one that I normally have, which is I tell people a bunch of jokes and make them laugh, and then they say, they share back with me. But it's important to develop like the other part of the box, And one of my challenges is really, and this is one of those things I learned from you, is asking good questions. And I think that'll be kind of a really good follow-up, maybe a topic for our group, is how do you ask those good questions? What's that process? We've talked about building the rapport, but then how do you ask those better questions? And I know that you have information on that, but absolutely, this is the kind of thing that we need to understand with people, and what way they want to hear things. Because I remember taking one of your classes before, and it's saying, you're used to talking this way, but that might not be the best way for that person to hear what you have to say. And and I've carried that with me since we had that conversation. So absolutely, these are kind of the core basic things that a lot of people who want to start talking to business owners kind of need to know and need to work with. So I do appreciate the information that you've shared today.
So let's take the next step then. So the next step says, hey, we learned a lot of information stuff, and you've got some insights, and it kind of connected the dots with some things that you've done before and some things that you can do forward, right? But when you talk about change, right, how do we get better? We have to change, then it has to do with action, right? So what are 3 things that you could do with this information to make things better for you and your team?
That's good.
Next week, now, whenever.
3 things. First thing I would do is I think I'd like to share this with some of the people that we're working with, and I've got 2 team members that, in particular, that I'm thinking of that are very gung-ho about talking to merchants. But the first thing that they say to me is, "How do I do that?" And I think this is kind of a good way of doing that. I have a person who came on. He has a relationship with a lot of business. He's a wholesaler, and he said, I don't really have much of a relationship with people. They come, they buy my stuff, I deliver the things, but I don't know if he's quite good at building that relationship. It's not part of his way of growing his business. And I think this could really help him. I think that would be a good way to share this with him and have him start those conversations with some of those business owners. Now, for me personally, I think I need to talk, maybe sit down with you and talk about that, asking better questions, because a lot of this I'm kind of inventing on my own, and I think this is one of the key things that we have to learn from other people is leverage the expertise of those people who have that expertise. Instead of reinventing it and doing it by trial and error, isn't it much better to go with someone who's an expert at it and leverage their knowledge and decrease that timeline? So for me, I think that would be a smart move for me personally. I think I've got an innate ability to do this well, but I certainly can do it a lot better, and I'd rather leverage expertise than, like I said, reinvent the wheel for myself. So those are kind of 2 things that I think of off the bat. The other one I'd like to do is that and this is kind of a part that's been very interesting for me, is going from corporate to entrepreneur, that unknown box, right? I uncovered a lot of things about myself, and learning more about that and how to identify the things about myself that I think are strengths or weaknesses, identify those, and obviously, and focus on the things I'm good at, but maybe work on the things that I'm, let's say, need some help on. I think that's kind of one of those key things, and maybe just an overall theme for those people who are entrepreneurs or, like you described earlier, have gone from the corporate looking to open up their own business. There's going to be a lot of growth, and I can speak from that from experience, a lot of personal growth while we're going through this, and my wife is another example. She was one of those people that was like, Chris, we're doing this, I will be the back office, I won't talk to anyone, right? That was kind of her thought. And very proud of her. She's gotten very good about following up with people, calling people, talking to people. So really knowing what yourself is, identifying those things, but then saying, hey, can I get better at them? And I think these are kind of the lessons for all those entrepreneurs or people who are beginning to explore being an entrepreneur need to think about.
Okay, so the first one you said was I got to share this information, so I'm going to send you a copy of this video, and you can send it out to your guys. The second thing I'll do is I told you this earlier, so I'm going to go ahead and send you the Thehari Window questionnaire that you can then send to your guys. And this is a simple 10 or 15-minute exercise. Answer the questions, chart it out. You'll know where your deal fits. Asking better questions. We'll set up some time outside of this call to figure out when we're going to do that. Really, asking better questions. We start with the end in mind. What are the answers that we want? And then we figure out what the questions are, and then we figure out how we're going to ask those questions and when can we ask those questions so that we can effectively, smoothly work our way through that process, right? Because if we ask difficult questions at the wrong time, we get odd behaviors and we don't get the answers that we're looking for.
I've never had that happen, John. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm laughing because I did this just the other day. I was like, that probably wasn't the right time to ask that question, and you could tell because the person kind of, they were talking, then they kind of they got the squishy faces, I call it. They were like, you could tell something there was a disconnect, and I was like, all right, I think the timing on that question was wrong. So that's why I was laughing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. With respect to the unknown, you've taken the sales disc assessment and you've also taken the sales skills assessment, so you could go into those documents and you could highlight those things that you would be willing and might be valuable to share. Now remember, the key to what you want to share is what you want to hear back, right?
Right.
So if you want to hear their challenges, and you had a great example, if you want to hear what the challenges they have, then you share the challenges that you have, right? If you want to hear what they don't like, then you share a little bit about what you don't like. If you want to know what they like, you share what you like. Both are valuable, right? And putting together our products and our solutions and tailoring them to meet exactly what somebody needs. I mean, we need to know that kind of information to be more effective. There's some other assessments out there that you and I could talk about. There's the Motivators Assessment. There's a Talent Insights Assessment. There's the Strengths Finder assessment, some of which that I certainly have, or other ones you can, online, all that kind of stuff. But if you identify what it is that you're looking to get answers from, what kind of answers do you want, and then you find that information about yourself, then you can share that stuff, and through the reciprocation principle, you'll start to get the answers that you're looking for that allow you then to provide better information and ask better questions. Well, Chris, I really appreciate your time today. I think this was valuable. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed your stories, and I'm really looking forward to getting some feedback from you as to what do you get being able to share this video, this tool, with some of your other team members.
All right, I will do that, and I will get that back to you. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing your knowledge with us. It's like I said, this is the kind of information that I wish I had started when I very first started doing this, because a lot of these things I learned a little bit by trial and error, and then of course when I saw you present it, I was like, you get those, that's why that worked well and that didn't. So again, I would encourage people, not just people on my team, but maybe you share it with some of the other people, that look, this is, if you're interested in being an entrepreneur, it's good to hear some of these basic steps to shortcut some of those pain points early on. So I would say this might be something not just good for my team, but maybe for some others also.
Well, I appreciate the vote of confidence, and I'm looking forward to it. Chris, I want to wish you the best of luck. Enjoy the week, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you again, John.
All right. Take care.
Bye.